Welcome to Raw Food. Let's get
Welcome
right
to
into
Raw
it.
Food, East Coast to West Coast. What's happening on your side of this country, Jay?
Woo! We got the fleet in town. We got Fleet Week.
Nice.
So all those closeted sailors are going to be out in the Castro. It'll be fun.
OMG. That will be fun. I'm sorry that we're not there to go dancing.
One day soon. It'll be great.
Yeah, but Badlands is gone though, right?
Yeah,
So
like we talked
what's
about.
there
Yeah.
now?
I
Have you
think
been down there since?
Yeah. I think Badlands is gone, but remember the guy who owns apparently like all the real estate at those like major intersections in the Castro, like Castro and Church and stuff. Like,
Okay.
that person owns all of those like commercial real estate suites.
Okay. All that whole strip there.
And he's owned it for decades. And so certain units there, he's strategically kept closed. And people are worried that Badlands will be another one of those things. And maybe it's just like a tax write-off for him.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
Is there a dance hall there at all, or is there
Nope.
nothing there?
It is closed.
Is Toad Hall open across
Toad
the
Hall's
street?
still around, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's still other dance halls, in the Castro, but not the specific Badlands venue.
Not the specific Badlands. Okay, so the other ones are still kind of jumping, but that one was closed. That's the one we kicked it at, though, big time.
Yeah, Badlands was the shit.
Oh, $5 Long Island iced teas, wrecked after 3. Not mad at the bartenders at all. At all. Love those guys. Oh, so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
yes.
the season 400 years of Earth kicks off this week with Herschel Walker continuing to still be weird, getting put on blast by one of his children, and getting so savagely roasted for his inept, inarticulate, goofy comments that at this point, I am astounded that the Republicans are still standing by him. What say you?
Part of me wants to be astounded, but part of me also says, this is their brand. They stick together. They don't care. And as we pointed out before, there are prominent people in conservative media that say, I don't care if he paid for an abortion. I want to control the Senate. And guess what? That's enough. Do you have an R by your name? That's enough for me.
That's enough. Sexual assault charges? Fine. Caught in hotel rooms with underage children? Not a problem. Gun-toting, hypocritical family values, lunatics while getting divorced and having threesomes? Okay with us. QAnon conspiracy people who think only the Democrats eat babies and rape children and not any Republicans, several of whom have been under child trafficking porn charges, we welcome. So at this point, do you think he has a shot at winning?
It's Georgia. Yes. Unfortunately. He's demonstrably unqualified too. It's not just the fact that he's a hypocrite. He literally is not cognitively capable of being a senator. The things that the Senate has to work on. Like, imagine if you put him on the Senate Intelligence Committee. Are you kidding me?
It's shameful.
Should we talk about the CTE piece of it too? Because I believe some people don't want to fully tee off on him. Don't want to fully let him have it, give him the full, the full canon of the criticism he deserves, because people think he's suffering from CTE and he's just kind of repeating his lines. He's repeating what he's told to say.
Okay, but even if he has CTE, let's say he does. Let's go with the theory that it's highly likely he could have CTE. Is he then in a condition to be running for Senate?
No.
Again, this country gets the leaders it settles for.
Yeah. You get the leadership you deserve. So when he gets into the Senate, he's just going to do whatever Mitch McConnell tells him to. I mean, which all the other senators do anyway, but like, he's just going to, what? All right, cool. I'll vote on this. I'll vote on that. I'll do whatever you tell me to. I just want to be a senator. I just want to be important. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it also begs the question, why does this guy want to be a senator? And it's just because he wants to be important. And some people came to him and blew some smoke up his ass and told him, hey, we want you. And
we want you because you can get the black vote.
Yeah, we predicted this more than a year ago.
Yeah,
that
you can get the
high time for Black Republicans was going to come, because anybody who's willing to repeat the MAGA mantra, anyone who fully buys into MAGA dogma and also happens to be Black, they'll move heaven and earth to put you on a platform, be it having you run for Senate or be it trying to give you your own show. If you're going to come out here and be a culture warrior and do exactly what we tell you to do and say exactly what we tell you to say, including every once in a while, we're going to ask you to say, fuck those black people. As long as you do that, and you can get just a handful of black folks to either vote for you or at least not show up to vote for Democrats, we will embrace you. We'll give you all money. We'll give you all the fame and glory that you want. But you better not actually think for yourself.
Right. That's ultimately the bullseye. As long as you're not thinking for yourself, the plan is working.
Yeah. Be a mouthpiece.
Shameful. The current polls are saying that the midterm elections are looking 50-50 either way. The Democrats have in their sling blade the whole abortion issue that has reared its ugly head in the last year. And the Republicans have in their pistol the Ukraine war and the recession that has peaked its head as well. What say you about the turnout of the midterm election?
Turnout for midterms tends to skew older. Why? Well, not that many people show up for midterms as presidential elections, and the people who have time to show up for midterms tend to be older. Those older people tend to vote Republican. Okay. You need younger Democrats to show up in a midterm election. Younger Democrats usually don't show up in a midterm election. Poor people generally don't show up in a midterm election. They can't get the time off, etc. And in order to motivate those people to go out and vote, unfortunately, you need a little bit more. And so we'll see. We'll see if those people are motivated enough to show up to vote. If you get something similar to a presidential turnout, then yeah, the Democrats will win. But the odds of getting something similar to a presidential turnout in a midterm are, not very good looking. So 50-50 is actually a big swing. Usually the party that is opposite the party of the president wins in the midterms. Going back to like the Great Depression, that's usually what happens. The party that is the opposite party of the incumbent president in the first midterm election after that president, usually that party wins.
Let me share some data that has emerged on Politico today. According to Politico, as of this morning, the battle to control the 50-50 Senate is at a stalemate, according to the most recent polls. With 30 days to go until Election Day, polling averages suggest Democrats and Republicans are each poised to win 50 Senate seats. Each party has a lead in just one seat currently held by the opposition. The Republican is slightly ahead in Nevada. The Democrats have a lead in Pennsylvania.
Yo, that Pennsylvania race is interesting.
That Pennsylvania race is very interesting, and that's one we're going to keep an eye on. Let me see if I can scroll down.
Yeah, we could do a whole episode about that guy.
Okay, let's see. So Arizona, last week's polls showed Democrat Senator Mark Kelly running ahead of Republican Blake Masters by 3 to 6 percentage points, respectively.
Mark Kelly's a doggone astronaut. He should be sweeping the floor with that guy.
It's shameful. It's shameful.
He's been to fucking space. His wife was Gabrielle Giffords, who was shot in the fucking head.
Right.
Arizona, this shouldn't be are you fucking kidding me?
Having said that, Masters has not led a single public poll after the primary or before it, and this week's survey suggested a comeback would be difficult. CNN poll reveals that the percentage of likely voters with an unfavorable opinion of Masters was 51%, only 35% viewed him favorably. That compares to Kelly's positive favorable to unfavorable rating of 48% to 42%. That
should be 80%.
It should be a blowout, but it's not. But it's good to know that at least in this particular case, again, I don't side with either party. I side with who's on the more pragmatic side of what's happening in our current state of affairs. And for me in this race, it would be Mark Kelly. Moving right along to Colorado, last week's poll in Colorado was from the Democratic firm Data for Progress, which gave Democratic Senator Michael Bennet a 9-point lead over Republican Joey Odea. His polling is 50% to 41%. Republicans have held out hope that Odea could beat Bennet, who won with just a plurality of the vote in 2010 and 2016. But the race hasn't come online, and Democrats' increasing margins here may be too much for Odea to overcome. Florida, Senator Rubio is running against Democratic Representative Val Demings in Florida. 2 new polls show he is ahead of her by 6 to 7 points.
I wish Val Deming the best.
I wish Val Deming the best as well. Georgia, it was an eventful last week where Republican nominee Herschel Walker is battling allegations he paid for an ex-girlfriend's abortion while also having a child with her.
They're not
a
out.
Survey USA poll in Atlanta showed Warnock with a 12-point lead. And a one-day survey from Insider Advantage showed Warnock ahead by 3 points. Walker has not led a public poll in Georgia since end of summer.
We shall see.
We shall see. Nevada. 2 new polls last week stated Republican Adam Laxalt to 2-point lead over Democrat Catherine Cortez Masto. Laxalt has now been the leader in every poll in the Reach Clear Politics database since the summer, but within a very tight range of 1 to 4 points. New Hampshire. Just 4 weeks removed from winning a divisive primary, Republican Don Bolduc is struggling to make headway in the polls against Democrat Senator Maggie Hassan. Hassan seems to be enjoying a roughly 7-point lead in the polling average, and the only poll to show Bolduc within striking distance came from a Republican-leaning group called Trafalgar Group. North Carolina. In the North Carolina race seems to be very tight. Despite leading the polling average, Republican Ted Budd is only at 45%, and last week's only poll gave him a 1-point advantage. The poll conducted by Survey USA showed both candidates with favorable and unfavorable ratings, hovering around 40%, befitting a race with a double-digit share of the votes still up for grabs. Ohio's J.D. Vance, he was the one behind the story of...
Hillbilly Allergy?
Yeah. New polls in Ohio last week. No, sorry, there were no new polls in Ohio last week, but there is reason to believe the race remains close as Democratic candidate Tim Ryan strengthens against J.D. Vance, who seems to be weakening. But there's also reason to suspect Vance's lead could be larger than stated here. Ohio polls also massively underestimated Trump's win in 2020.
Fair enough. JD Vance is supposed to be a smart guy. He's a hedge fund guy and everything. But when he comes out here, he's not actually proposing any new policies. Your brand is I'm a smart Republican, but he's not offering anything but culture war, just like all the dumb Republicans. You line up what JD Vance is saying in his speeches, and you line up what Herschel Walker says in his speeches. You know, there's a chasm between the two in terms of their IQ. They're saying the same shit.
Same script. And JD Vance has flipped with regard to the president of the last administration. At first, he was vehemently against him, and at some point flipped the script and became extremely pro him. I think that speaks to your point about following the script. Let's get to Pennsylvania. As you pointed out, the Pennsylvania election is a pretty contentious and interesting one. We've got Republican Dr. Oz running against Democrat John Fetterman, who, according to the most recent polls, is leading against Oz by 6 points, 46% to 40. That should be a blowout, in my opinion, but I'm glad to hear that Fetterman has the lead. Fetterman's lead has been cut in half over the past few months. He once led Oz by as many as 9 points in the Real Clear Politics average, but the Republican still has high negatives that cast doubts on his ability to get much closer. USA Today's Suffolk poll showed just 34% of voters have a favorable opinion of the celebrity surgeon turned politician, while 51% view Oz unfavorably. And my final state that I have data on is Wisconsin. The latest polls, which came out week before last, showed incumbent Republican Senator Ron Johnson retaining his lead against the trailing Democrat Mandela Barnes, according to all the polls across the summer. Wisconsin was also ground zero for the 2020 polling failure, with Trump and the Republican Party overperforming their standing in pre-election surveys on election day. And that is the latest polls with regard to where these candidates are in position for as we approach the midterm elections. What say you?
The polls are great. At the end of the day, we know there's likely to be a lot more turnout on the Republican side because of those just simple demographic statistics. So how many of those people, like, polls are supposed to represent a proportion of the population. How many of those people are actually going to get out there and vote? We will see. Also, at the same time, I have some views about about how this recession will get handled, where there are some things, there are some ideas that at least smart, moderate Republicans have that should be listened to when it comes to dealing with a recession. I do not think raising taxes on anybody should have happened with the big spending bill that was just passed, given that we're in a recession. Even Barack Obama said you shouldn't raise taxes in a recession. Let's set all that aside for now, just to focus on the polls. The polls sound okay, but again, it'll come down to turnout. We can do a full breakdown on Pennsylvania. We can do a full breakdown on what to do about the recession at a later time. But anything that says that the Democrats could end up with a still split 50-50 Senate is actually a win for them, because statistically speaking, demographically speaking, historically speaking, they actually would be much more likely to lose, and lose significantly.
You don't think abortion's giving them momentum?
I think abortion is the only reason why that we're looking at possibly having a tie at the end of all of this. If it weren't for that, the polls would show them about to get their asses kicked.
Fair enough.
Let's move on to this story about a person that you happen to know, because it raises a very interesting question. When should one call off an engagement? And I thought this was very, very interesting. Can you give us a little bit of background?
A friend of mine called off an engagement at a very exclusive location because the person she was partnering with showed his ass after their engagement. And I applaud her courage to not pull the trigger just for the sake of not being alone. I also applaud women who are like, therefore I go conquer. Hey, every decision you make for you, only you know why you make those decisions. But I applaud her for not going forward out of fear of embarrassment or loneliness or any kind of weird, toxic messaging that we give women in their 30s, that the show must go on at any price. And she realized this price wasn't worth its weight in salt. And she dropped this clown and called off the wedding and packed her stuff and moved out. And I applaud her, and I'm proud to be her friend. And I applaud strong women who pick themselves over bum ass dudes.
Hell yeah. And what's funny is this was a rich bum ass dude, but like he was toxic as fuck is what it sounded like.
A narcissist, and not as rich as he was trying to play himself off to be, as narcissists do.
Give us tell me about the whole birthday party thing and how this guy just kind of peacocks, for lack of a better term.
Well, yeah, it wasn't a birthday. We went out to meet for the first time. We went to dinner together. And I think within like 15, 20 minutes of knowing him, he told me he was rich. And I mean, who says that? Who does that? It's irrelevant in the first meeting of someone. I mean, I'm sure that would reveal itself through conversation and time. But the fact that he felt the need to kind of say that already was a red flag for me. But hey, like if my friend says she loves somebody and she's interested in them, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt, right? So it's not my job to judge the guy. It's just my job to make an observation of him. And that was my observation. So I wasn't shocked, but I was surprised. And like I said, I'm proud of her. So many women would have stayed just because of the venue. And she didn't. And she had the courage to say, I deserve better than this. I see the signs and I'm going to walk.
Yeah. And I guess he changed up. So after the
engagement, he sort of flipped the script.
Yeah.
After the engagement, he sort of flipped the script on her and lost his gentlemanliness. And once you detect that, man, it never gets any better than, I mean, as good as any relationship is going to be the honeymoon stage, right? Right. Getting up to getting married and the honeymoon stage, first year of the relationship. And if you're having red flags and signs already at that point, drop them. Just walk. There's 8 billion people on this planet. Don't suffer through this.
Exactly.
I'm so proud of her. And she's beautiful and intelligent and self-sufficient and has a career and
very accomplished.
Very accomplished, very seasoned, very talented, very authentic woman. So lawyer, I'm happy that she chose herself. She's my hero, and I'm proud to be her friend.
Yeah, she's a lawyer, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, especially if she does actual litigation, reading people is part of that, right?
Yeah, and when you love someone, you give them the benefit of the doubt.
Mm-hmm.
You understand the things that trigger them. You understand kind of on a more intimate level the things that have impacted who they are. So you may make allowances that friends and other people may not understand. So I don't blame her for giving him the benefit of doubt and seeing where it goes. But where it was going is not where she wants to be, and she chose herself. And I'm so proud of her.
That's what's up.
That's what's up. Jay, what is happening to American society and pop culture? Are people so fragile now that we can't have any requirements whatsoever in the education sector? What say you? Speak to what we are referencing, sir.
Students at NYU got a professor fired, a professor who teaches organic chemistry. And the textbook that the professor teaches organic chemistry out of was written by this teacher. Other people use this textbook. All right. And they got this person fired because they believed that the grades he was giving out would endanger their ability to get into med school. Mind you, NYU is a great school, tough to get into, but also costs like $50,000 or $60,000 a year. So I can understand how some very deep-pocketed alumni who sent their kids to that school might have had the ear of the dean. And by nature of the kids complaining, might have been able to get this person fired.
I am surprised that the school co-signed this and actually fired him. All this is doing is putting mediocre doctors in hospitals now.
Thank you. Let's say the professor's name, Professor Maitland Jones Jr. And
give us a little of his background. It's organic chemistry, I believe, right?
Organic chemistry was the class. For everyone who's not familiar, organic chemistry is required for people who are in any of the majors in undergrad that are pre-med. So if you're literally pre-med, or if you're bio or something that, you usually major in before you go to med school, it's going to require organic chemistry. Organic chemistry is always one of the hardest classes you will take if you are going to med school. It is one of the hardest classes you take.
And necessary, though. It's a foundational class. It's one of the tenets of medicine. You need that class. You need to do well in that class. This isn't beyond the pale to expect from medical students.
Yeah. And New York University specifically said, hey, it was too hard. But the professor himself said, hey, the kids weren't coming to class. And the professor made videos. He recorded his lectures and uploaded them. He said, hey, the kids weren't watching.
You can watch them as often as you want.
Questions.
No, it's shameful. I mean, we're dumbing down society. We're dumbing it down across the board. We're not giving teachers the flexibility to demand more from their students, to set the expectations high, where all we're doing is creating more mediocre students who are not grasping the fundamentals of what we need to move society forward, medicine forward, education forward, culture forward, art forward. And if you think kids in medical school in other countries are trying to get professors fired and dumbing down tests, you got another thing coming. So when foreign students come to this country and start wiping the floor with American students, it's not the immigrants that's the problem. It's the laziness of Americans and this entitlement that everybody seems to have with regard to everything. Everyone has an excuse for everything these days. It's misogyny, it's racism, it's this. And I'm not saying that all of that's not there. It is, but it's being overused. Firing a good teacher from a good school because you guys can't hack it is wrong. Go to him, form study groups, get a tutor. If you're going to that school, a lot of people have resources. The ones that don't, there's tutoring at the school. Go to the professor. I've gone to college. You've gone to college. There are many a times that you've had to go to the professor and throw yourselves at their feet for mercy for whatever reason. You're overwhelmed with other assignments. You just misunderstood something. There's ways to be successful without dumbing down the literature and the tenets of what it is you're trying to do in the first place.
Yeah.
And it's sad that we're allowing this and engaging this in society. And it's the adults' fault. The school shouldn't have co-signed that.
No.
Because now you're going to get all kinds of teachers fired.
Yeah.
But that's the whole goal. This is all intentional. Ruining education in the United States is intentional.
It must be. At this point.
You can't be this efficient without being this inefficient without being intentional about it. Yeah. No other profession, no other industry is failing this much while people are making money.
Mm-hmm. And for how much New York University costs, you're supposed to be getting a good education. And this person is here to deliver that. If that means you get a little bit of tough love, you get some bad grades, you get and you get slapped on the wrist a bit, figuratively speaking, so be it. You're going to be a better doctor for it. Okay. Now I heard, because I got to talk about this at a local restaurant with some friends who went to NYU Law and knew people who went to NYU undergrad and took this professor's course. They said he's a bit of a dick.
He probably is.
Yeah. Firm but fair is what.
Irrelevant. Right. Irrelevant if he's a good teacher, and irrelevant if he's giving you what you need to be a good doctor. You don't have to like everybody. It's not a congeniality contest. Mm-hmm. It's medical school. Can he probably be a little bit more, open to students? Who knows? Maybe he can. That's something you, as a teacher, adjust to each class. You kind of ride the waves of the energy of the class. Having said that, if it's just sheer, this class is too hard nonsense, I'm disappointed that NYU co-signed that and actually let go of a very seasoned, very respected teacher in a profession that desperately needs blood pumping through it, which is the medical profession.
Exactly. Like you said, we're just going to have more mediocre doctors because in med school, before they even got to med school, they were coddled and cosseted and handed good grades because they were so afraid of getting a bad grade and how that bad grade might impact their ability to get into med school. Really?
Rather than thinking about being a good doctor. Shameful. Yeah. Shameful. So we get the doctors and the leaders we settle for.
Yeah. Good luck. But one more point. This wouldn't be happening if it weren't for rich kids complaining. If it was a bunch of poor kids complaining, I think the NYU brass would have blown them off. I think the needle only moved when enough rich kids and their rich parents, who are also probably alumni and are also probably donors, once they got the ear of the dean and started pushing to have this person fired, I think that's what moved the needle. I highly doubt if this was just poor kids, they would have actually done something about this. I believe a school like NYU, with all the money that they pull in with donations and with how much that school costs and with the notable...
what they went to get that professor, right? What they went to get that professor at that school. I mean, there's a whole process to becoming a professor. Those roles are not something that they just throw out to anyone who can catch. It's a very well-respected position. So all the effort that they went into to securing him in the position for it to end like this is a pretty extraordinary thing. And I think it's something that should concern us. And it's not something that we should be engaging and indulging in this society, let alone feeding it. Mm-hmm. It's not to our demise on this episode of Raw Food.